2 rounds of the season have come and gone. Let's talk about what happened this weekend at the 2026 Chinese Grand Prix, the first sprint weekend on the calendar. I know you were excited. What's going on, guys? Welcome back. We are now 2 full rounds into this 2026 season, and boy, oh boy, what a weekend it was. It started out with a bit of same old when it comes to Mercedes, but it actually ended up with still a little same old Mercedes. But there were plenty of things to talk about as we take a look over the Grand Prix on Sunday as well. For this video, we're going to go ahead and be talking about our weekend quick hits, our weekend winners and losers. We're going to take a look back at the predictions that we made before the weekend began and get an update on our community championship. Once again, if you're interested in joining our community championship, head to the link down below. Join the Discord. Get involved. Prove that you know wheel. Get involved. I know you want to. Guys, let's go ahead. Let's get this party started by going and talking about our weekend quick hits. George Russell may have won this sprint race, but this weekend belongs to Kimi Antonelli. Where else could we possibly start the video other than the rookie sensation, or I guess not so rookie sensation, the sophomore sensation. It makes more alliterative sense as well. So Kimi Antonelli officially becoming the youngest pole sitter in Formula One history, and then also converting to his first Grand Prix win the next day on Sunday. What a weekend for the young Mercedes driver, finally getting a win under his belt. Yes, it took this season, and yes, it took this long. We've seen a lot of promising things from Kimi Antonelli over his first season in the Mercedes, but it wasn't until now here in China for him to take his pole position and convert it to a race win. What a weekend for Kimi Antonelli. That said, George Russell still does lead the championship, I believe by 4 points over his teammate. George had a bit more of an eventful weekend, winning the sprint race and having a bit of a front row seat to the Ferrari shenanigans that were going on Sunday. He did ultimately come home to finish second in the Grand Prix. So his record so far this season is a win in Australia, a win in the sprint race in China, and a second in the Grand Prix in China. So George looks well primed and on his way to challenging for a championship. And at this point, it might just be his teammate who gives him his biggest push in that. So definitely something to watch, but we have to start this video off by talking about Kimi Antonelli getting to stand on the top step of the podium, getting to share it with his teammate, with his race engineer, and Lewis Hamilton, the driver whose seat he ended up in. It was an emotional finish to Sunday, as we saw, and he earned every single one of those moments, and I could not be happier for him. Speaking of Hamilton on the podium, yes, Lewis Hamilton finally gets his first podium with Ferrari. He won the sprint race here in China a year ago, but it isn't until this year, the first year of this new regulation set, for him to finally stand on the top of on a Grand Prix podium. And kind of the other side of the same coin for Kimi Antonelli's comments, you obviously have both Mercedes driver Peter Bonington, Bono, standing on the podium with Kimi and Lewis joining them to round out what really is a Mercedes family podium. And it was a lot of fun to see. You could tell just how much it meant to Bono, how much it meant to Kimi, George, and Lewis to all have that moment together. And it was a lot of fun to see. But hopefully this is just the first of many podiums for Lewis, as I'm sure he's itching and raring to go and seemingly enjoying these regulations much, much more than the last. And before we go any further, that's P4 in the constructors TGR Haas F1 team to you, bucko. That's right, Haas F1 team. My team that I picked when they were bottom of the barrel in 2022 are 4th in the constructors. Ollie Behrman is 5th in the drivers. What is happening? I don't know where I'm at. I don't know what to do here. Mom, come pick me up. I'm scared. That said, what a weekend for Ollie Behrman, scoring himself some points in the sprint race and then turning around and putting in a 5th place finish in the Grand Prix. Did it take a double Mclaren DNS? Yes, probably. Did it take a Max Verstappen DNF? A lot less likely, because Ollie Behrman was holding off Max Verstappen for a long while before Max ended up retiring. I'm just going to put that one out there. Just going to put it out there. We're going to let it simmer. I'm going to put it out there. But so far, Haas could not have asked for a better start to the season. Obviously, Esteban Ocon had his moment with Franco Colapinto. We're going to cover that one here in a second. But all in all, when it comes to Ollie Behrman, I could not be happier to see the young lad absolutely sending it. And it is really, truly starting to show just how good of a talent he is in Formula One. And as of right now, I'm kind of counting my lucky stars that all of the top teams are pretty set in their driver lineup, and we may get to hold on to him for a little bit longer. So fingers crossed. I can't wait to see what happens. Ollie Behrman, my GOAT. Speaking of Ollie holding off a charging Max Verstappen, at this rate, we might see Max just retire mid-season. Who really knows at this point? There's not really too much to belabor here. I mean, Max was really rough off the line again on Sunday. Fell pretty much all the way down the order. Ended up charging all the way back to 6th position, chasing down Ollie Behrman for 5th until ultimately an issue caused him to retire from this one. And yeah, it is a tough scene for Red Bull and Max right now. Max has not been shy in expressing his discontent with these regulations in these cars. And so at this point, who really knows what's going to happen, but definitely worth mentioning right now. I touched on it before. The Alpine versus Haas battle this season might feed generations, because while the battle at the front is just Mercedes and the twinges of Ferrari at the race start, Alpine versus Haas is going to be a battle of wits, character, and bravery over the course of the season. You had Ollie Behrman and Esteban Ocon battling away with Pierre Gasly and Franco Colapinto in this one. Esteban Ocon went full war mode and dove down the inside of Franco Colapinto and ultimately spun them both, earning himself a 10-second penalty and a P14 finish. Franco Colapinto thankfully recovered to a P10 finish. And then Pierre Gasly, after Max's retirement, was trying to chase down Ollie Behrman for 5th. So in Ollie Behrman 5th, Pierre Gasly 6th, Franco Colapinto 10th, and Esteban Ocon would have finished in the points as well before, kamikazing Franco into, turn 2? It's so hard to tell with the really long turn 1. Is that if that's 2? I couldn't tell you. But Esteban 100% deserved the penalty, but I, for one, cannot wait to see what this battle has in store for us the rest of this season. Where else could we go now besides Carlos Sainz? Williams obviously belaboring, of course, to start this season, had a lot of issues and reliability, spats. Obviously, Alex Albon does not make it out of the pits in this one, also with a DNS to his name. And then there is Carlos Sainz, who, thanks to all of the retirements, DNSs, finds himself finishing in P9 after a beautifully run Chinese Grand Prix, which ultimately saw him net probably the best possible position for him and Williams to finally get on the board here in 2026. Will they be able to hold up? I'm not entirely sure, but at the same time, definitely worth mentioning. And then the last point that I want to talk about is welcome back unreliability in Formula One. Would we rather have it, as DNFs rather than DNSs? Probably. But at the same time, when that light goes out, when those lights go out on Sunday, you never know what's going to happen, and I think that makes it extremely exciting. It makes the highs high, makes the lows lower. If you're a McLaren fan, if you're an Oscar Piastri fan, you have not seen Oscar Piastri complete a Grand Prix lap this season. You have McLaren P3 in the constructors, a singular point behind or ahead of Haas F1 team. If Esteban Ocon doesn't murder Franco Colapinto, there is a chance that McLaren and Haas are tied, or McLaren is behind Haas in the standings at Haas P3 in the constructors. I, for one, would have loved to see it. I'm just saying, at the end of the day, though, unreliability, I think, is only adding to it's hard to say that it's contributing to my dislike of these cars, but at the same time, it is making these weekends extremely unpredictable, and I, for one, find that fascinating, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Let's go ahead and move on now quickly to our weekend winners and losers. For our weekend winner, it's got to be Kimi Antonelli. How could it possibly be anybody else? Finally getting his first, pole position in the Grand Prix. Finally getting his first win. It was a wonderful weekend for him, and I don't know how much more we realistically do have to say about it. Just absolutely stellar, and I can't wait to see him probably get a couple more this year at this pace. That really might have more to do with George Russell than anything else, but at the same time, it could happen. And I think it definitely starts with a weekend like this. So that's all I'm going to say for that. I do want to give a couple of shout outs in this section as well, because a lot did happen. And I think there's some things that we need to talk about. First honorable mention has to be Lewis Hamilton, finally getting his podium with Ferrari. It's been a long time coming for him. Not necessarily enough, and he's stood on 204 podiums now, so definitely not enough to usurp Kimi Antonelli for biggest weekend winner. But at the same time, definitely worth mentioning. And I talked about unreliability, and I think there is another honorable mention, biggest winner of this weekend, and it's going to be Cadillac. I'm going to mention Cadillac here because while a bunch of teams are having these gremlins, and obviously it is all up in the air who really is going on, and yes, Cadillac did have one DNF in Australia, going into this weekend, there is a team who might be a few seconds off the pace over a single lap, but at the same time is finishing these races. You have Aston Martin who's DNFing both cars. You have Mclaren who's DNSing both cars. You have Gabriel Bortoleto who's not starting. You have Alex Albon who's not starting. And right at the back, at the end of the day, is both Cadillacs churning laps and finishing races. For a new team on the grid, when you have these well-established teams failing to do so, definitely worth a mention and definitely worth the props that I want to give them here. So congratulations, Cadillac, Lewis, and Kimi for being my weekend winners at the end of the day. Let's go ahead and move on to weekend loser. And this one is a weird one to try and pick. Ultimately, I'm going with McLaren in this one because I think they are at this point truly the third fastest team. But at the same time, when you have both cars not starting the race and you're only a single point ahead of Haas in the standings, and you really just kind of look lost and everyone's kind of wondering what you were doing all of the back half of last year, I think it's hard not to leave this weekend going, what are you doing? Even Aston Martin, at this point, we're kind of expecting it. And so, McLaren, my weekend losers, primarily just because you were planning on doing the race and then ultimately found two separate electrical issues that ultimately brought both of your drivers out of the car for the entire race. So that's all I really have to say about this one. It was kind of a weird one. Maybe Esteban Ocon is also a good shout here. A weird dive bomb, a bit of overzealousness on basically a rookie by a very well-established driver. Bit of a hit or miss move, but ultimately, I'm going to go with McLaren. All right, for whatever reason, I can feel my voice going, so let's quickly run through our predictions that we made before the weekend began and see how we did and see if we can get a bit of a better jump on this season for predictions than we did in round one. Let's kick things off with my biggest positive surprise. I went for Lewis Hamilton, expecting him to finally get his first podium. He loves racing around the Shanghai International Circuit, and boy, oh boy, did he enjoy it once again. Finishing ahead of Charles Leclerc, standing on the podium, definitely a point for me here. As we move on to biggest disappointment, I went with the rookie Arvid Lindblad. And as much as it pained me to say that he would be the biggest disappointment following such a high in Australia, I think it's for that exact reason that I went with him. And ultimately a DNF, some spins here or there, and just an all-around, just really rocky weekend, I think definitely gave him his inverse effect of the welcome to Formula One moment that he had in Australia. So I'm taking the point on that one as well. He had a tough weekend, but that's not too unsurprising. He is a rookie, by the way. As we move on now to qualifying, I had a George Russell pole position, a Kimi Antonelli P2, and I went with Oscar Piastri P3. Obviously, George and Kimi, you could swap those around, half point each for them, single point total for qualifying. We are up to 3 points. As I go on to sprint race winner, I went with George Russell. No brainer whatsoever. That will be another point for me, bringing us to 4. Race podium, I went with a George Russell P1, a Lewis Hamilton P2, and a Charles Leclerc P3. For whatever reason, thinking Kimi Antonelli might have a bit of a moment, opening the door for a Ferrari double podium. Alas, it was not to be. Kimi Antonelli ended up taking the win. And so a half point for George and a half point for Lewis bring me to a single point for race podium. And that brings us to our one crazy prediction. Can I make it a clean sweep of getting at least a single point in every single prediction? Absolutely not. I predicted both Aston Martins to finish the Grand Prix. And that was nowhere near true, as Lance Stroll retired basically on lap like 12 or whatever it was. It was not that far into the race whatsoever. And then ultimately, Fernando Alonso also electing to DNF from this one with potential hand and nerve damage. So, bit of an overzealous prediction for me, I will admit. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at where we stand now, leaving the Chinese Grand Prix weekend in our Community Predictions Championship. There is a tie at the top between me and F1 Inferno, both of us on 7 points. British TTG bringing up here in third with 5.5 points. Spectral, who unfortunately did not get their predictions in on time, still on 2.5 points. And welcome in Sentinel 40, making his season debut in predictions, himself earning 2 points as well. So a solid week of predictions for me. We'll see if we can keep it up as we head to Japan in a couple of weeks. So time will tell. But let's go ahead and move on now and talk about 3 lingering questions. All right, there's only so many questions that you can take away from a weekend like that, but I think I found 3 pretty intriguing ones to start us off. Let's give it a quick question, probably the biggest thing that most people are asking following the Chinese Grand Prix, and that is, can Kimi Antonelli actually put up a championship fight? It does look like he is a bit behind George in terms of pace over a single lap. He obviously got a benefit from George's issue in Q3. George honestly was lucky to even get a lap in, and so Kimi was able to convert that into a win. But at the same time, based from what we saw in the sprint race and sprint qualifying, it does seem like George still has a little bit of pace over Kimi. And we'll see if that can last the entire season, because at this point, it looks like our only true chance to see a battle for the championship is going to be Kimi Antonelli. Can he do it? Sure, absolutely. There's absolutely no reason why he couldn't. But at the same time, it's still far too early to tell. And at the end of the day, he's just a kid who's doing his best. So time will tell, but that's definitely something I'm keeping my eye on. As we move on now to basically a lot of the talking points I talked about earlier, can Alpine versus Haas please continue to give us cinema like this? There were so many fun moments to watch in this one, and Alpine versus Haas was absolutely near the top, if not the top. If it wasn't for Kimi Antonelli and Lewis Hamilton podium, this would be the main takeaway from this race, which is Alpine and Haas being extremely close on pace. You have Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon in their history. You have Pierre Gasly's pace versus Ollie Behrman's pace that he's been in. Franco Colapinto, which put up a fantastic fight on old hard tires after that safety car restart. And Esteban Ocon, who is trying to catch up to his younger teammate. The cinema is off the charts, and I, for one, can't wait to see what happens next. And then finally, will Aston Martin ever complete a Grand Prix? This is a question many of us are going to be asking the entire season. But in all actuality, my actual question is, how will reliability issues shape the constructors this season? Obviously, Haas now sit in P4 in the constructors, thanks to a spin by Isaac Hadjar in the first lap of the race, and then Max Verstappen retirement, and Ollie Behrman 5th in the drivers. And so it's these sorts of things paired with the double McLaren DNS that ultimately is shaping a lot of what the top half of the constructors is looking like. Obviously, Mercedes and Ferrari are very well separated from the rest of the pack, but basically from like McLaren down to at least the other point scorers, it's all really close, and it's going to be something to watch for the entire season. And I, for one, am going to be really interested to see what sort of things unreliability will do to this field over the course, at minimum, even just the first half of the season. Because I have to imagine these teams will start to figure it out eventually. But as of right now, unreliability seems to be playing a big role in what the shape of these championships will look like. Guys, that only leaves one question left. What is next in Formula One? And the answer is we only have to wait a couple of weeks before Formula One heads to the Japanese Grand Prix to race around Suzuka. One of, if not the, I'm not going to finish that sentence, but one of definitely the best racetracks in the world. One of my personal favorites. It's a lot of fun. It's very technically challenging, and it's going to challenge these drivers and these cars from start to finish. It's going to be a lot of fun. Last year, we had Verstappen, Norris, and Piastri on the podium. Time shows us, as of right now, 2 rounds in, that podium will likely change quite a bit as we head now towards Japan. Who do you think we're going to see on the podium? Stay tuned for a cool week and a half before we start to talk about what we're going to expect going in to the Japanese Grand Prix. But guys, that is going to wrap it up for me here in this one. I appreciate you making it this far into the video. China was one of those weird races where everything went almost exactly as you expected, but at the same time still left us with a lot to talk about. And so at the end of the day, that's all you can really ask for. But we'll be back here in a couple of weeks to talk about Japan. Stay tuned. If you made it this far, I appreciate you. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment down below what rating you would give the Chinese Grand Prix out of 10. And leave a like on the video. It really does help me out. Join the community. We'd love to have you. But guys, that is going to wrap it up for me here in this one. And I'll see you in the next one.